On my way to pick up my husband for his promotion celebration, his cold executive assistant blocked the penthouse doors. She looked down at my 5-year-old daughter and smirked, telling me his wife and son were inside having family time. I did not cry or cause a scene. I simply covered my daughter's ears and called my third brother, who rules the city's mob and cops. I told him to bring the crew and wreck that house. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe if you have ever had to stand up to people who severely underestimated your worth and your power. I am Maya, 32 years old, and until a crisp Tuesday afternoon, I believed I was building an unbreakable legacy with the man I loved. My husband Julian had recently been appointed vice president of Vanguard Creative, one of the most prestigious advertising agencies in the city. We had been together for 6 years, weathering his early career struggles while raising our beautiful 5-year-old daughter, Zuri. To Julian's family, I was merely a glorified event planner. I coordinated corporate retreats, a modest profession that kept me busy but never threatened Julian's desperate need to be the undisputed head of the household. What Julian did not know was that my event planning business was entirely a front. I was actually the silent majority partner in a massive commercial real estate firm. I had deliberately masked my wealth through shell corporations to protect Julian's fragile ego. He needed to feel like a king, and I loved him enough to play the part of his financially dependent wife. That Tuesday began with a sense of triumph. I secured a custom red velvet cake to surprise Julian for his promotion. I dressed Zuri in a beautiful yellow sundress and drove downtown to the Vanguard Creative Building. Walking into the gleaming marble lobby, balancing the heavy bakery box, I felt a profound sense of pride. I had supported this man from his days as a broke college student all the way to the executive suite. We stepped into the private glass elevator and rode it to the 40th floor. The doors slid open, revealing a plush reception area leading to Julian's new corner suite. The frosted double doors to his office were closed, but I could hear faint laughter inside. I smiled at Zuri, putting a finger to my lips to signal our surprise. As I took a step forward, a figure moved to block the double doors. It was Vanessa, Julian's newly appointed executive assistant. Vanessa is a white woman who happens to be married to Julian's older brother, Jamal. When Jamal brought her into the family 2 years ago, she was struggling. I was the one who welcomed her. I paid for her wedding dress. I bought her the custom-tailored emerald blazer she was currently wearing just last Christmas. I had even quietly pulled strings to ensure Julian hired her as his assistant, so she and Jamal could afford their new house. I expected Vanessa to smile and open the doors. Instead, she crossed her arms over her chest and planted her feet firmly on the carpet. Her eyes swept over me and Zuri with a look of absolute disdain. "You cannot go in there, Maya," Vanessa said, her voice dripping with condescension. I stopped in my tracks, assuming Julian was in a confidential client meeting. Vanessa shifted her weight and smirked, a cruel twisting of her lips that made my stomach drop. "His wife and son are inside having family time," she announced loudly. The air in my lungs vanished. I stood frozen, gripping Zuri's small hand, while the heavy bakery box suddenly felt like lead. I asked her to repeat herself. Vanessa let out a mocking laugh. She gestured to the lobby security guard who had followed us up the elevator, a burly man who now stood a few feet behind me. "Julian told me to keep the baby mama out." Vanessa continued, her voice rising with malicious enjoyment. "Tasha is his real family. You were just a placeholder from his Spelman days." The sheer audacity of her words hit me like a physical blow. Julian and I had met in Atlanta when he was attending Morehouse and I was at Spelman College. He was drowning in debt. I had paid his rent for 2 years while pretending the money came from an academic grant so he would not feel emasculated. Now the woman whose salary I practically paid was calling me a stereotype and referring to another woman as his real wife. Vanessa pointed a manicured finger at my chest. "Julian only married you because you had good credit, and he needed a co-signer when he was broke," she sneered. But Tasha comes from a real pedigree. She gave him a son, a true legacy. You are just a glorified party planner who trapped him. Take your kid and leave before I have security throw you out." The security guard took a hesitant step forward, asking me to step back toward the elevators. Zuri looked up at me, her large brown eyes wide with confusion. "Mommy, why is Auntie Vanessa being mean?" she asked softly. In that exact moment, a profound shift occurred within me. The Maya, who constantly shrank herself to protect the feelings of others, died instantly. The supportive wife who hid her power to nurture a fragile man vanished. I did not cry or scream. I felt a terrifying, absolute calm wash over my body. I looked at the frosted glass doors, listening to the muffled sounds of a strange woman and child laughing with my husband in the office that my secret real estate firm literally owned. I released my grip on the cake box. It hit the imported marble floor with a heavy thud. The cardboard burst open, sending red velvet crumbs and cream cheese frosting splattering across the pristine white tiles and onto Vanessa's expensive shoes. Vanessa shrieked, jumping back and shouting at the security guard to grab me. I ignored her completely. I knelt down gracefully and placed my hands gently over Zuri's ears, shielding her from the ugliness of the moment. With my free hand, I reached into my designer handbag and pulled out my phone. I bypassed my lawyer and financial advisors. I scrolled straight to the contact for my third brother, Trey. My family rarely spoke about Trey in polite company. While I navigated commercial property acquisitions, Trey ruled the city's concrete shadows. He controlled the underground logistics network and had half the local police precinct on his payroll. He was not a man who negotiated. He was a man who eradicated problems. The phone rang only once before his deep, gravelly voice came through the speaker. I kept my eyes locked on Vanessa's horrified face as I spoke into the receiver. "Trey," I said, my voice eerily steady and devoid of all emotion. "I am on the 40th floor of the Vanguard Creative Building. Bring the crew to Julian's suite right now. Wreck the doors." The phone goes back into my designer bag. Vanessa laughs. It is a loud grating sound that echoes off the imported marble walls of the penthouse reception area. She actually throws her head back, her blonde hair catching the recessed lighting, reveling in what she thinks is my absolute humiliation. "A ghetto stereotype to the very end," Vanessa sneers, her voice dripping with the kind of practiced condescension she has been perfecting since she married my brother-in-law, Jamal. She takes a step forward, gesturing vaguely at the ruined red velvet cake on the floor. "You cannot handle losing a high-value man, so you throw a tantrum and call your thug brother. Julian warned me you would get loud. He always said you could take the girl out of the hood, but you can never wash the hood off." I do not raise my voice. I do not give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. I keep my hands firmly over Zuri's ears, protecting my daughter's peace, while Vanessa digs her own grave. "You really think Julian is a high-value man?" I ask, my tone dangerously quiet. "A man who hides behind his brother's white wife to do his dirty work?" "He is a vice president," Vanessa snaps back, her face flushing red. "He is upstairs about to be named CEO of Vanguard Creative. He is a corporate king Maya. And Tasha is a corporate queen. They belong together. You and your family of street hustlers were just a stepping stone when he was broke at Spellman. Jamal and I always knew you were trash. Now get out of my lobby before I make this ugly." She snaps her fingers at the burly security guard standing a few feet away. "Escort her off the premises. If she resists, physically remove her. Julian authorized full force for trespassers." The security guard shifts his weight. He is a large man built like a linebacker wearing a crisp uniform that suddenly looks too tight across his chest. He glances at me, then at the 5-year-old girl holding my hand. He clearly does not want to do this, but Vanessa is the executive assistant to the man about to run the building. She signs his overtime slips. He swallows hard and steps forward, reaching a thick hand toward my shoulder. "Ma'am, you need to step toward the elevators," he says, his voice gruff but nervous. "Do not make me put my hands on you in front of your little girl." I do not move a single inch. I just stare dead into his eyes. If you touch me, I tell him, the absolute certainty in my voice stopping his hand midair, you will never work in this city again. And that will be the least of your problems. Vanessa scoffs loudly. Ignore her, grab her arm and throw her out. The guard takes a breath and leans in. Before his fingers can graze the fabric of my silk blouse, a soft melodic chime echoes through the reception area. The private executive elevator has arrived. The heavy steel doors slide open with a smooth whisper. The air in the lobby instantly shifts. The faint scent of expensive cologne, fresh concrete, and raw intimidation floods the space. Six massive men step out of the elevator car. They are not wearing cheap security uniforms. They are dressed in immaculate, custom-tailored black suits that stretch over broad shoulders and heavy muscle. They move in perfect, terrifying synchronization, fanning out across the lobby. At the center of them is my third brother, Trey. Trey does not look like the street thug Julian and Jamal always claim he is. Trey looks like power. He runs the concrete logistics for the entire metropolitan area. He decides which skyscrapers get built and which construction sites shut down indefinitely. He operates in the shadows, but his money and his influence dictate the sunlight. He has half the local police precinct on his payroll and the respect of every man who works the streets. Trey steps onto the marble floor. His dark eyes lock onto the security guard whose hand is still hovering inches from my shoulder. Trey does not yell. He does not pull a weapon. He simply tilts his head and looks at the guard. The transformation is instantaneous. The color completely drains from the security guard's face. He recognizes Trey. Anyone who works security in this city knows exactly who controls the concrete and the cleanup crews. The guard realizes in a fraction of a second that he is standing between Trey and his little sister. The guard drops his hands as if he has just touched a hot stove. He stumbles backward, his boots slipping slightly on the cake frosting I dropped earlier. He puts both hands up in the air, a universal gesture of complete surrender, and backs himself flat against the far wall, pressing his spine into the drywall as if trying to merge with it. He abandons Vanessa entirely. Vanessa looks from the terrified guard to the six men now dominating her pristine lobby. Her arrogant smirk vanishes, replaced by wide-eyed panic. The power dynamic has shifted so violently that she physically sways on her designer heels. "What is this?" Vanessa shrieks, her voice jumping an octave as her corporate authority evaporates. She scrambles backward, pulling her phone from her blazer pocket with trembling fingers. "You cannot be up here. This is a secure corporate floor. I am calling the police right now." Trey ignores her completely. He walks straight up to me, his heavy footsteps echoing in the silent room. He looks down at Zuri, offering his niece a brief, warm smile that softens his hardened features for just a second. Then he looks at me. "You good?" Trey asks, his voice a low, steady rumble. "I am fine," I reply, calmly dropping my hands from Zuri's ears now that the immediate threat of the security guard is gone. "But the trash in that office needs to be taken out." Trey gives a single slow nod. He turns his attention to the entrance of Julian's suite. The doors are magnificent. They are $20,000 slabs of custom frosted glass etched with the Vanguard Creative logo, reinforced with steel framing and secured by a heavy magnetic lock. They are designed to keep the world out. They are designed to protect the fragile ego of the man hiding behind them. Vanessa is frantically jabbing at her phone screen, holding it up to her ear. "I mean it," she screams, her voice echoing shrilly. "The police are on their way. You are all going to jail." Trey smirks. It is a cold, calculated expression that has terrified men far more dangerous than a panicked white woman in an emerald blazer. He does not say a word to her. He does not even acknowledge her existence. Trey steps right up to the center of the double doors. He plants his left foot firmly on the marble tile, shifts his weight, and drives his heavy steel-toed boot forward with explosive, devastating force. The impact is deafening. The magnetic lock violently snaps. The reinforced steel hinges shriek as they are torn straight out of the drywall. The $20,000 frosted glass doors do not just open. They implode. They are kicked entirely off their frame, flying inward and crashing down onto the hardwood floor of the executive suite in a spectacular explosion of shattering glass and splintered metal. A cloud of drywall dust plumes into the air. Through the jagged, gaping hole, where the doors used to be, the sudden silence inside the suite is absolute. The laughing has stopped. The celebration is over. It is time to face the wrecking crew. The dust from the shattered drywall is still swirling in the air like a thick gray fog as I step confidently forward. I tighten my grip on Zuri's small hand, guiding her carefully over the jagged remains of the $20,000 frosted glass doors that now lie ruined on the floor. The crunch of our shoes against the debris is the only sound piercing the sudden suffocating silence of the penthouse suite. Trey steps into the room right behind me, his 6 men fanning out to secure the perimeter of the massive office with military precision. They do not say a single word. Their sheer physical presence sucks the oxygen right out of the room, creating an impenetrable wall of muscle and dark, tailored suits between me and the hallway. I look past the ruined entryway and take in the scene that was supposed to be my husband's private promotion celebration. The suite is an obnoxious display of corporate excess, featuring panoramic floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline, a massive mahogany desk, polished to a mirror shine, and a plush velvet lounge area occupying the far corner. Standing right in the center of that lounge is Julian. He is holding a heavy green bottle of vintage champagne completely frozen mid-pop. Standing intimately close to him is a woman I do not know but whose wrist I recognize immediately. She is wearing the custom gold and diamond Cartier watch that mysteriously went missing from my jewelry box 3 months ago. Standing just in front of her is a boy, maybe 10 years old, wearing a miniature version of Julian's expensive tailored suit. Julian stares at the destroyed doors, his face cycling rapidly from absolute shock to unhinged fury. His grip weakens, and the heavy champagne bottle slips from his hands. It plummets to the hardwood floor, shattering into 100 jagged green pieces. Expensive foam sprays across the cuffs of his Italian trousers and ruins the imported Persian rug beneath his feet. "Are you completely insane?" he screams, his voice cracking as he lunges forward with his fists clenched. He takes exactly 2 steps before Trey simply shifts his weight, crossing his massive arms over his chest and fixing Julian with a dead, predatory stare. Julian stops dead in his tracks, his eyes darting nervously to the 6 men blocking his only exit. "You bring street thugs into my corporate office," he yells, though he wisely takes a half step backward. I do not flinch at his outrage. I stand tall, keeping Zuri tucked safely behind my leg, entirely shielding her from his aggressive energy. "I brought reality into your corporate office, Julian," I say smoothly, my voice remarkably steady. Julian immediately tries to regain control of the narrative. He refuses to look guilty. Instead, he puffs out his chest, adjusts his silk tie, and attempts to humiliate me in front of his secret life. He looks at the woman, then back at me, a cruel sneer twisting his features. "You are pathetic, Maya," he says, raising his voice so his new audience can hear every single word. "You should be down on your knees, thanking me for giving you my last name and pulling you out of obscurity." He points a dismissive finger at me, his arrogance returning in full force. "When your little private equity firm was failing and you were drowning in bad investments, I gave you a lifeline," he boasts, projecting a completely fabricated history. "I gave you respectability in this city. You were nothing but a bitter, uncultured college dropout who had absolutely no idea how the real corporate world works. I provided you with a lifestyle you could never have achieved on your own, and this is how you repay me, by throwing a ghetto temper tantrum and destroying company property." He steps closer to the woman, wrapping a protective, possessive arm around her shoulder and pulling the 10-year-old boy securely against his side. "This is Tasha," he announces, his chest swelling with misguided pride. "And this is my son, my real family. Tasha gave me a true firstborn heir while you were busy trying to play businesswoman and failing miserably. A man of my status needs a legacy, Maya. He needs a woman who understands how to support an executive, not a street-level liability who brings gangsters to his place of business." I look directly at Tasha. She does not look ashamed of being caught with a married man. Instead, she boldly adjusts the Cartier watch on her wrist, deliberately turning her arms so the diamonds catch the overhead lighting and flash in my direction. She reaches for a crystal champagne flute resting on the glass coffee table and takes a delicate, arrogant sip. Her eyes sweep over me and Zuri with absolute pity, dismissing us as irrelevant peasants invading her royal court. Julian is going to be named Chief Executive Officer of Vanguard Creative today, Maya. Tasha says, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness and profound condescension. You are severely embarrassing yourself in front of his staff. Take your little girl and go back to that boring house in the suburbs where you belong. You are completely out of your league in a place like this. Julian nods vigorously in agreement with her assessment. He pulls a sleek smartphone from his breast pocket, tapping the screen with frantic, angry energy. I am calling the police captain right now. Julian snarls, pointing his phone directly at my face like a weapon. I play golf with the precinct commander every single weekend. You and your thug brother are going to federal prison for felony property damage, and I am going to make sure social services takes Zuri away from you before the sun goes down. I do not flinch. I do not break eye contact. I stand my ground in the center of the ruined office, my hand gently resting on Zuri's head, keeping her face pressed against my leg, so she does not have to see the pathetic man her father has become. The air is thick with the smell of spilled vintage champagne and drywall dust, a fitting perfume for the destruction of Julian's fake kingdom. He is standing there, chest heaving, his face contorted with a mixture of terror and overwhelming arrogance. He genuinely believes his corporate title is a magic shield. He believes the system that he just bought his way into will protect him from the family he abandoned. He holds his sleek silver smartphone out like a weapon, his thumb hovering over the screen. He wants me to beg. He is waiting for me to fall to my knees, crying and pleading for him not to take my daughter, begging him not to send my brother to prison. That is the Maya he remembers. That is the woman he manipulated for 6 years. He expects me to shatter just like the frosted glass doors currently glittering in pieces across his imported rug. But I simply stare at him. I offer him a cold, empty smile. I nod toward the phone in his shaking hand. I tell him to go ahead and make the call. Julian swallows hard, clearly unnerved by my absolute lack of panic, but his pride will not let him back down in front of Tasha. Tasha smirks, adjusting the stolen Cartier watch on her wrist, looking at me as if I am already wearing handcuffs. Julian taps the screen violently. He hits the speakerphone button so the entire room can hear his victory. He wants to humiliate me. He wants Tasha to witness his supreme power. The phone rings loudly, the sound echoing off the floor to ceiling windows. It rings twice before a gruff, authoritative voice barks through the speaker. Captain Miller here. State your business. Julian instantly transforms. The panic vanishes from his posture, replaced by the smooth, entitled cadence of a wealthy executive who believes he owns the city. Captain Miller, this is Julian. Julian from Vanguard Creative. We played 18 holes at the country club last Sunday. Julian the captain says, his tone softening into friendly recognition. Good to hear from you. What can I do for you this afternoon? I need you to dispatch a SWAT unit to my penthouse suite immediately, Julian demands, his voice rising in manufactured hysteria. My deranged, estranged wife has just breached my secure corporate office. She brought a gang of armed street thugs with her. They kicked my doors off the hinges. They are destroying company property and threatening my safety, the safety of my new wife and the safety of my son. I want them all arrested for felony trespassing and property damage. And Captain, I want Child Protective Services here immediately. She dragged my 5-year-old daughter into this violent environment. She is an unfit mother. I want full custody process tonight. Tasha lets out a quiet, satisfied sigh, leaning her head against Julian's shoulder. She thinks they have won. Julian glares at me, a victorious sneer plastered across his face. He is waiting for the captain to assure him that sirens are already wailing down the street. He is waiting for the heavy hand of the law to crush the woman who subsidized his entire existence. Instead of panic, I feel a profound sense of pity for him. Julian spent so much time trying to climb the corporate ladder that he entirely forgot how the real world operates. He thinks golf course handshakes and country club memberships are the ultimate currency. He does not understand that the city is not run from glass towers. It is run from the concrete foundations below. Trey does not wait for the captain to respond. My brother steps forward. He does not rush. He does not run. He moves with the terrifying, inevitable momentum of a freight train. His heavy boots crunch over the shattered glass, the sound sharp and violent in the quiet room. Julian instinctively shrinks back, pulling Tasha and the fake air behind him, his courage evaporating the second a real man invades his personal space. Trey towers over Julian. The size difference is almost comical. Julian in his tailored Italian silk trembling, and my brother in his custom dark suit immovable and absolute. Trey calmly reaches his massive hand forward. Julian gasps, flinching as if he is about to be struck, but Trey simply plucks the silver smartphone right out of Julian's sweaty grip. Julian does not resist. He is completely paralyzed by fear, his mouth hanging open in silent shock. Trey holds the phone up to his own face, staring dead into Julian's terrified eyes. Captain Trey says into the microphone. His voice is a low, gravelly rumble that reverberates through the entire suite. It is Trey. The silence on the other end of the line is immediate and profound. It is not the silence of a dropped call. It is the heavy, suffocating silence of a powerful man realizing he has just stepped onto a landmine. For 3 agonizing seconds, no one breathes. Julian looks confused, his eyes darting between the phone and my brother. When Captain Miller finally speaks, his voice has undergone a massive, humiliating transformation. The friendly, bureaucratic authority is entirely gone. His tone is suddenly subservient, stripped of all pride, completely deferential to the man holding the phone. Trey the captain stammers the anxiety bleeding through the tiny speaker. I did not realize you were in the Vanguard building today. I had no idea you were involved in this situation. I am involved, Trey replies smoothly, never breaking eye contact with Julian. And we have got a bit of a mess up here on the 40th floor. I need you to send a private cleanup crew to the Vanguard penthouse. No lights, no sirens, no official reports. And Captain, I need you to make sure every single patrol car stays at least 10 blocks away from this address for the next hour. My sister and I are having a private family discussion, and I do not want any interruptions. Do we understand each other? Julian stops breathing. I watch the realization hit him like a physical strike. The color drains completely from his face, leaving his skin a sickly ashen gray. His jaw slackens. The corporate shield he was hiding behind just shattered faster than the glass doors. He is staring at my brother, finally comprehending that the man he mocked as a street thug holds the leash to the police captain he thought was his powerful friend. Understood, Trey, the captain says without a single second of hesitation. You have the block. The patrol cars are being rerouted right now. The cleanup crew will wait in the loading dock until you give the signal. Call me directly if you need anything else. Trey hits the red button on the screen, ending the call. The dial tone echoes in the room. He looks at the phone, turning it over in his large hand, and then he casually tosses it back to Julian. It hits Julian in the center of his chest and clatters to the floor, landing in a puddle of spilled champagne. Julian does not even try to catch it. He is hyperventilating, his chest rising and falling in rapid, shallow jerks. Tasha is shaking. The smug superiority has vanished from her face. She looks at the broken doors, then at the 6 massive men blocking her exit, and finally at me. She realizes she is trapped in a room with a woman whose family controls the city grid. The young boy standing next to her buries his face in her expensive dress, sensing the overwhelming danger in the room. You cannot do this. Julian stammers, his voice a pathetic, trembling whisper. He backs up until his thighs hit the edge of his massive mahogany desk. You cannot just buy the police. I am a vice president. I am about to be CEO. I pay taxes. I am a respected executive in this city. You are just a criminal. I take a slow step forward, stepping over a large shard of frosted glass. You still do not get it, Julian. I say, my voice ringing with absolute clarity. You play dress-up in corporate boardrooms, you beg for promotions, and you hide money in offshore accounts. My family pours the concrete this building stands on. You lease space in this city. We own it. And you just made the biggest mistake of your pathetic life by thinking you could discard me and threaten my child. Julian opens his mouth to speak desperately, searching for a new lie, a new manipulation, anything to save his skin. He looks wildly around the room, hoping for a miracle. Before he can utter a single word, chaotic sounds erupt from the hallway outside the suite. Heavy dress shoes and clicking high heels come sprinting down the marble corridor, accompanied by loud, frantic panting. Someone is rushing toward the destruction. The noise grows louder, echoing off the walls, until two figures suddenly burst through the empty, jagged doorframe, completely ignoring the 6 intimidating men standing guard. It is my mother-in-law Brenda and my brother-in-law Jamal. They are breathing heavily, their faces flushed with exertion and misplaced rage. Vanessa must have called them the second Trey's men stepped off the elevator, crying about a home invasion. Brenda is wearing her Sunday church clothes, clutching a designer purse she bought with money Julian stole from our joint accounts. Jamal is wearing a cheap suit, his chest puffed out in a ridiculous display of fake alpha male bravado. They step right over the shattered glass, their eyes locking onto me with absolute venom. They have arrived to protect their golden goose. They have arrived to crush the woman they have secretly hated for 6 years, entirely unaware that they have just walked into a slaughterhouse. Brenda does not even break her stride as she marches into the devastated office. She wears a lavender church suit and an oversized matching hat, clutching a white designer handbag against her side. She steps right over the jagged shards of the $20,000 frosted glass doors, her sensible heels crushing the remaining pieces into a fine white powder. Jamal follows closely behind her, his face flushed red with unearned outrage. They do not look at the 6 giant men standing around the perimeter of the room. They do not assess the tactical disadvantage of their situation. Their shared arrogance blinds them to everything except me. Brenda sees Julian cowering against his mahogany desk, and her maternal instinct twists into a vicious, misdirected fury. She locks her eyes on me, her face contorting with absolute hatred. Without saying a single word, she lunges forward. She raises her right hand, her heavy gold bracelets clinking loudly together, aiming a full-force slap directly at my face. I do not blink. I do not even raise my arms to defend myself. I know I do not have to. Before Brenda's hand can travel even halfway to my cheek, Trey moves. It is a terrifying blur of motion. He does not strike her, but his massive hand shoots out and catches her wrist in a vice grip in midair. The sharp sound of the impact stops everyone in the room. Brenda gasps, her eyes flying wide open in shock, as she tries to yank her arm back. Trey does not let go. He simply holds her wrist suspended in the air, his face an impenetrable mask of cold authority. He looks down at her, a silent warning radiating from his dark eyes. Brenda realizes very quickly that she has made a severe miscalculation. She stops struggling, her chest heaving as Trey slowly and deliberately releases his grip, letting her arm drop back to her side. But Brenda cannot keep her mouth shut. If she cannot strike me physically, she decides to tear me apart verbally. She points a shaking manicured finger at my face. "You are ruining my son's life!" she screams, her voice bouncing off the panoramic windows. "You have always been a dark cloud hanging over this family. We tried to accept you. We tried to welcome you into our home, but you are nothing but a mistake. You are a street-level mistake who got lucky catching my brilliant son before he peaked. You trapped him, Maya. But you cannot hold on to a man like Julian. He outgrew you the day he got his first real promotion." I stand perfectly still, keeping Zuri safely tucked behind my legs. I let Brenda scream. I let her expose every ounce of toxicity she has been hiding behind fake holiday smiles for the past 6 years. Brenda turns her back to me and rushes over to where Julian is standing with Tasha. She reaches out and grabs Tasha by the shoulders, pulling the other woman into a tight, dramatic embrace. Tasha smirks over Brenda's shoulder, soaking up the validation. Brenda pulls back and looks at Tasha, as if she is looking at royalty. She reaches down and places her hands affectionately on the 10-year-old boy's shoulders, pulling him forward for everyone to see. "Look at this," Brenda demands, turning her venomous gaze back to me. "Look at what a real family looks like." Tasha is a purebred queen. She understands how to support a successful executive. She knows how to stand by her man without dragging him down into the gutter. And look at this beautiful boy. He is a true legacy. He is the firstborn son Julian always deserved. He is the future of our family bloodline. The cruelty in her words is deliberate and precise. She knows exactly where to strike to cause the most damage. Brenda takes a step toward me, her eyes narrowing into cold slits. A real woman gives her husband strong, healthy sons, she says, her voice dropping into a harsh, mocking sneer. What have you ever given him, Maya? You gave him one little girl and a string of miserable failures. My breath catches in my throat, a sharp pain piercing my chest. She is weaponizing the darkest, most agonizing moments of my life. She is throwing my past miscarriages in my face in front of a room full of strangers. 3 times Brenda continues, her voice dripping with absolute disgust. 3 times my son had to sit in a hospital room and watch you fail to carry a child to term. 3 times he had to suffer through your inability to do the one thing a wife is supposed to do. A woman who can only produce one single child after years of trying does not deserve a man like Julian. You are defective, Maya. Tasha did it right the first time. She gave him an heir. You just gave him medical bills and disappointment. The silence in the penthouse suite is deafening. Trey shifts his weight, his knuckles turning white as he balls his hands into massive fists. The men around the room tense, waiting for my signal to tear the room apart. Julian looks away, staring at the floor, too cowardly to look me in the eye, while his mother weaponizes the babies we lost. Tasha takes another sip of her champagne, looking incredibly pleased with herself. I feel a hot, blinding rage building in the center of my chest, but I refuse to let it consume me. I refuse to give Brenda the satisfaction of seeing me break. I look down at Zuri. My beautiful, perfect daughter is staring at my legs, her small hands gripping the fabric of my trousers. She does not understand the cruel words being spoken, but she feels the hostile energy in the room. I place my hand gently on the top of her head, stroking her braids. She is not a consolation prize. She is my entire world. I look back at Brenda, my face completely devoid of emotion. I do not defend my body. I do not defend my losses. I let her ugly words hang in the air, allowing everyone in the room to witness exactly how vile she truly is. Seeing that his mother's vicious attack did not make me collapse into tears, Jamal decides it is his turn to play the dominant alpha male. He steps out from behind Brenda, puffing out his chest and straightening his cheap off-the-rack suit tie. Jamal has spent his entire adult life desperately trying to emulate his older brother's fabricated success. He wants to be seen as a heavy hitter, a wealthy corporate player completely ignoring the reality that his bank account is perpetually overdrawn. He walks up to stand shoulder to shoulder with Julian, presenting a united hostile front. Vanessa scurries over from the reception area, crossing her arms and standing proudly behind her husband. They are a chorus of parasites rallying around their perceived meal ticket. You are completely out of your mind coming in here and causing this kind of destruction. Jamal barks, pointing an accusing finger at me. He completely ignores Trey and the 6 imposing men in black suits, his arrogance shielding him from basic survival instincts. You have always been ungrateful, Maya. You walk around with your nose in the air acting like you are better than us, but we all know the truth. You are nothing without my brother. You are a dependent, a charity case. Without Julian's vice president's salary, you would be absolutely destitute. You would be back living in a cramped apartment in the projects, struggling to keep the lights on. You rely on his hard work to fund your little stay-at-home mom lifestyle. You rely on his corporate success to buy your clothes and feed your kid. Jamal takes another step forward, his voice echoing with unearned authority. This is Julian's office. This is Julian's building. You have absolutely no right to be here, and you certainly have no right to question his personal choices. He is a provider, and providers make the rules. Now I am telling you to get your kid, pick up your trash, and get off his property before I personally drag you to the freight elevator and throw you out onto the street. You do not belong in a place like this. I let the echo of Jamal's ridiculous speech fade into the drywall dust. I do not shout back. I do not argue about my financial status. I simply observe them. I look at Jamal's tailored suit, noting the fraying stitching near the lapel. I shift my gaze to Vanessa, looking at the expensive emerald blazer she is wearing, the exact blazer I purchased for her last Christmas. I look at her designer shoes, the ones she bragged about buying after Jamal supposedly got a big bonus at work. I let the silence stretch out long and heavy, until the confident smirks on their faces begin to falter slightly. I take a slow, deliberate breath and lower my voice, forcing the entire room to strain to hear my words. The absolute calm in my tone makes Jamal shift uncomfortably. "You talk a lot about providers, Jamal." I say smoothly, my words cutting through the tension like a scalpel. "You talk a lot about who funds whose lifestyle. You stand there in a suit you can barely afford, defending a brother who is currently begging the police captain to save him, and you demand that I leave his property." I take one step forward, leaving the shattered glass behind me. I look directly into Jamal's eyes, then slide my gaze over to Vanessa's suddenly pale face. "Tell me something, Jamal," I ask, my voice dropping to a quiet, lethal whisper. "Every single month you wire a $3,000 payment to a private holding company to cover the mortgage on that beautiful 4-bedroom house you and Vanessa live in. You think you are so successful. You think you are so independent." I tilt my head, offering them a chilling, empty smile. "Who do you think owns that holding company, Jamal? Who do you think actually pays the mortgage on your house?" The question hangs in the dusty air of the penthouse suite like a lit match over a powder keg. Jamal completely freezes. The ridiculous, puffed-out posture he was holding just a second ago collapses. He looks down at his cheap suit, then darts his eyes toward Vanessa, his mouth opening and closing without a single sound coming out. He lacks the intellectual capacity to process what I just implied, but the sheer, unwavering confidence in my voice triggers a primal panic deep inside his chest. He knows he has never actually met the owner of the holding company that mysteriously approved his mortgage when his credit score was in the gutter. He is suddenly realizing that his entire existence as a supposedly successful man might be a carefully orchestrated illusion. Vanessa sees the sudden, humiliating weakness in her husband. She cannot stand it. She refuses to answer my question about the mortgage, violently deflecting the conversation to protect her own fragile ego. She steps out from behind Jamal, her face flushing an angry, blotchy red. She smooths down the lapels of the emerald blazer I bought for her, desperately trying to project the image of a high-level corporate gatekeeper. "I am not playing these childish, manipulative games with you, Maya." Vanessa snaps, her voice shrill and grating. "You can stand there and spout all the delusional nonsense you want, but you are not in the projects anymore. You are in a secure corporate facility, and I am the one who holds the keys." She reaches into her pocket and pulls out her phone, holding it up with a triumphant, malicious gleam in her eye. She thinks she has found the ultimate trump card. Empowered by the arrival of Brenda and Jamal, Vanessa feels entirely untouchable. She points the phone at me, her manicured acrylic nail tapping aggressively against the screen. "You seem to have forgotten exactly who I am and what I do for Julian," Vanessa says, her voice echoing off the panoramic glass windows. "I am not just an executive assistant. Julian trusted me with the legal logistics of his transition to chief executive officer. He knew his soon-to-be ex-wife was a bitter, vindictive liability, so he made sure his assets were protected. My name is on the commercial lease agreement for this entire floor as Julian's official proxy. I hold the legal authority over this premises. You have absolutely no legal right to stand in this building, let alone cause felony property damage." Brenda claps her hands together, letting out a loud, victorious cackle. "That is right, Vanessa!" Brenda shouts, pointing a cruel finger at me. "Show this street trash how real business is handled. Julian trusted you with his affairs because you are competent and loyal. He knew Maya would try to drag him down the moment he filed for divorce, so he put his smart family members in charge of his real estate. Throw her out, Vanessa. Throw her out on the street where she belongs." Julian, however, does not join in the cheering. He is still pressed flat against his mahogany desk, his face the color of wet ash. He just watched my brother force a precinct captain into total submission. Julian is beginning to suspect that putting the lease in Vanessa's name was not the brilliant legal shield he thought it was, but he is too paralyzed by terror to stop her. Vanessa taps the screen of her phone, navigating to her contacts list. I am calling building management right now, she announces, making sure Tasha and Brenda hear every single word. I am having you legally trespassed from the property. When Marcus brings his security team up here, I am going to have them physically drag you by your hair into the freight elevator. I do not move a muscle. I simply cross my arms over my chest and look at her. I let her make the call. I want her to dig the grave as deep as she possibly can before I push her inside. Put it on speakerphone, Vanessa. I say, my voice perfectly level. If you are going to humiliate me in front of Julian's new family, I want everyone to hear exactly how much power you wield in this city. Vanessa sneers at me, mistaking my calmness for resignation. With pleasure, she spits back. She hits the speaker button and turns the volume all the way up. The phone rings loudly through the suite. It rings twice before a crisp professional voice answers. Building management. This is Marcus speaking. Marcus, it is Vanessa from Vanguard Creative. She barks instantly, adopting a demanding, tyrannical tone. I am calling from the 40th floor penthouse suite. We have a massive security breach, and your lobby guards completely failed to do their jobs. Vanessa, Marcus says, his voice carrying a hint of practiced patience. What seems to be the problem up there? The problem is that we have violent, unauthorized intruders trespassing in our executive suite. Vanessa yells, pacing back and forth across the ruined Persian rug. I need you to dispatch your entire security team to the 40th floor immediately. I want these people forcefully removed from the premises, and I want them permanently trespassed from the building. My name is on the commercial lease as the proxy for the chief executive officer, and I am officially demanding their immediate extraction. There is a brief rustling sound on the other end of the line. Marcus is clearly checking his computer terminal. I understand you are listed as the proxy on the Vanguard lease, Vanessa. Marcus replies calmly. Can you please identify the intruders for the incident report? It is Julian's psychotic, estranged wife, Vanessa says, glaring at me with absolute venom. Her name is Maya. She brought a gang of thugs up here and they destroyed company property. I want her gone right now, Marcus. The moment the name Maya leaves Vanessa's lips, the atmosphere on the phone call changes completely. The background typing noises immediately stop. The silence that stretches over the speakerphone is heavy, profound, and utterly terrifying. It is the exact same silence that fell over the police captain just minutes prior. Vanessa waits for 5 seconds. She taps her foot impatiently, her hands resting on her hips. Marcus, she snaps. Did you hear my directive? I said dispatch security right now. The building manager clears his throat. The crisp, professional authority in his voice has completely vanished. When he finally speaks, his tone is thick with dread and extreme hesitation. Vanessa. Marcus stammers, his voice barely rising above a whisper. I cannot do that. Vanessa freezes. Brenda and Jamal exchange a highly confused glance. Even Tasha, who has been standing silently in the corner, raises an eyebrow. This was not the response any of them anticipated. Excuse me, Vanessa demands, her voice jumping a full octave. What do you mean you cannot do that? I just told you my name is on the commercial lease agreement. I am the proxy for the company paying millions of dollars to rent this space. You work for us. You will send security up here right this second, or I will personally ensure you are terminated by the end of the business day. Vanessa, please listen to me, Marcus says, the panic now fully evident in his shaking voice. I am looking at the ownership registry right now. I cannot dispatch security to remove that woman. I am legally prohibited from doing so. Vanessa's face contorts with blinding, irrational rage. She is losing her audience. She is looking weak in front of Brenda and Tasha, and she simply cannot handle the humiliation. Why she screams into the phone, her vocal cords straining. Give me one valid legal reason why you cannot remove a trespassing street rat from my leased office. I do not wait for Marcus to answer her. I decide it is time to end the charade. I release Zuri's hand and take 2 slow, measured steps toward the center of the lounge. Every eye in the room tracks my movement. I reach into my designer bag, sliding my hand past my wallet and my keys. My fingers wrap around the cold, smooth surface of a metallic black folder. I pull it out, holding it up so the overhead lights reflect off the expensive binding. I step right up to the intact glass coffee table standing between me and Vanessa. I lift the metallic black folder and bring it down hard against the thick glass. The heavy cracking thud silences Vanessa instantly. The sound echoes through the penthouse, carrying the unmistakable weight of absolute finality. I look directly into Vanessa's wide, panicked eyes, leaning forward until my face is just inches from hers. Because Vanessa, I say, my voice dropping to a smooth, chilling register that freezes the blood in her veins. You cannot trespass the owner of the entire skyscraper. I slide my hand past my wallet and pull the cold, smooth, metallic black folder from the depths of my designer bag. I step right up to the intact glass coffee table standing between me and Vanessa, and I flip the heavy cover open. The thick cream-colored parchment paper inside lies stark against the black leather lining. I push the documents across the smooth glass, stopping them right at the edge where Vanessa is standing. The bold, embossed seals of the city property registry catch the recessed lighting, gleaming with undeniable, absolute authority. They are the original notarized commercial deeds for the Vanguard skyscraper. Vanessa looks down. Her eyes dart across the heavy black text tracking the legal terminology and the undeniable signatures. Her mouth falls open, forming a perfect silent circle of shock. Her fingers go entirely slack. The smartphone she was just using to threaten me slips from her grip and crashes onto the hardwood floor. The screen splinters into a spiderweb of cracks, but she does not even flinch. She just stares at the paperwork, realizing her entire livelihood, her authority, and her arrogant superiority have just been reduced to dust. You actually believed I was a struggling event planner, drowning in bad investments, I say, my voice ringing with absolute clarity. You believed I spent my days organizing suburban birthday parties and begging for scraps. I let the silence stretch for a fraction of a second before delivering the killing blow. I am the founder and majority shareholder of Apex Commercial Real Estate. I am not an event planner. I am a commercial developer. I bought this entire building 8 months ago. I turn my gaze to Julian, who is gripping the edge of his mahogany desk so hard his knuckles are pure white. I bought it through a blind shell corporation because I knew your incredibly fragile ego could never handle the truth I tell him, watching his eyes widen in terror. I knew you could not stomach the reality that your wife was infinitely more successful than you will ever be. Vanguard. Creative has been operating at a massive loss for 3 years, Julian. You are not a corporate king. You are a terrible businessman running a sinking ship. Every single piece of this luxury lifestyle you are parading around today has been completely subsidized by my money. I gesture around the room, taking in the panoramic windows, the expensive furniture, and the terrified woman standing next to him. I pay for this penthouse suite. I pay for the luxury company cars you lease. I even subsidize the bloated, unearned salary Vanessa collects every 2 weeks for playing your little proxy. You have been playing dress-up with my money, Julian. You brought your mistress into a building I own to celebrate a promotion in a company I am keeping afloat, while threatening to throw me out on the street. You are not the master of the universe. You are my tenant. Brenda physically stumbles backward, bumping into the velvet sofa. The vicious, hateful woman who just tried to slap my face and mocked my miscarriages suddenly evaporates. In her place is a terrified, calculating parasite, realizing the host organism is about to cut off the supply. She immediately tries to change her tune. Her voice takes on a sickeningly sweet, high-pitched, pleading tone. Now, Maya, sweetie. Brenda stammers, holding her hands up in a gesture of total surrender. Her eyes are wide and frantic. Let us not be hasty. You know how family gets when emotions run high. We were just surprised, that is all. We did not mean any of those terrible things we said. You know I love you like a daughter. Julian is just confused right now. You are his wife, his real family. We can sit down and talk about this like sensible adults. We do not need to throw away all these years of marriage over a simple misunderstanding. Do not ever call me sweetie again. I snap, my voice cracking like a whip. And do not pretend you did not mean every vile word that came out of your mouth. You showed me exactly who you are, Brenda. You showed me that you value a stolen watch and a fake legacy over basic human decency. I am just returning the favor. Jamal, however, cannot handle the pivot. While his mother tries to grovel and save their financial lifeline, Jamal's fragile masculinity completely shatters. The realization that the woman he has mocked and belittled for years holds the absolute leash to his livelihood makes him furious. He turns bright red, the veins in his neck bulging against the collar of his cheap suit. He doubles down, stepping aggressively forward, unable to accept his own profound humiliation. "This is a trick," Jamal yells, spittle flying from his lips as he points a shaking finger at the deeds. "You forged those papers. You are trying to steal from my brother. You cannot own this building. You are just a woman from the projects. You do not have the brains or the capital to run a commercial real estate firm. This is illegal, and I am going to have you locked up for fraud. You are nothing but a liar." He takes one more step toward the coffee table, raising his hand as if he intends to sweep the documents onto the floor. Trey does not even have to give an order. Two of his men step smoothly out of the shadows, crossing their arms and blocking Jamal's path. Jamal stops instantly, swallowing his rage as he looks up at the towering figures. His chest deflates, his bravery vanishing the second he faces real opposition. He shrinks back, humiliated and entirely powerless, muttering under his breath, but refusing to make eye contact with anyone in the room. The absolute destruction of their false reality hangs heavy in the penthouse. Vanessa is trembling, staring blankly at her broken phone. Brenda is staring at the floor in defeat, her hands wringing together nervously. Jamal is trapped by his own cowardice. The only sound is the faint hum of the building's ventilation system and the distant traffic from the city below. Then a low, rhythmic sound breaks the silence. It starts as a deep chuckle from the far corner of the room. It builds, growing louder and more frantic until it turns into a full maniacal laugh. Everyone turns to look at Julian. The color has returned to his face, but it is an unhealthy, feverish flush. He pushes himself away from his desk. The terror that had paralyzed him just moments ago is suddenly gone, replaced by a reckless, unhinged arrogance. He starts clapping his hands together in a slow, mocking rhythm. The sharp smacks echo across the shattered glass and ruined drywall. He shakes his head, a genuinely deranged smile spreading across his face. He leaves Tasha and the boy behind, striding confidently into the center of the room. "You really think you are so smart, Maya?" Julian says, his voice dripping with triumphant malice. "You really thought you could just march in here, drop a piece of paper on the table, and destroy my life? You thought you could come in here and play the ultimate boss?" He stops just a few feet away from me, crossing his arms and looking down his nose. His eyes are wide and wild with a desperate manic energy. "You might have a building deed, Maya. You might own the concrete and the glass. You might even own the lease," he says, leaning in close so I can smell the stale champagne on his breath. "But you have zero cash." Julian's manic laughter fills the ruined penthouse suite, bouncing off the panoramic glass and echoing down the empty corridors. He wipes a tear of mirth from his eye and turns his back on me, striding confidently over to the corner where Tasha is standing. He wraps a possessive, heavy arm around her waist, pulling her flesh against his side. The sheer terror he exhibited just moments ago has completely vanished, replaced by a toxic, intoxicating wave of pure arrogance. He looks at me as if I am a bug he is preparing to crush under his expensive Italian loafers. He shakes his head, a smug, venomous grin spreading across his face. "You really thought you outplayed me?" Julian says, his voice dripping with utter condescension. "You thought you could walk in here, slap a piece of paper on the table, and watch me crumble. You might be the landlord, Maya. You might hold the deed to this skyscraper. But you are a complete amateur when it comes to high-level corporate strategy. I saw your accounts. I saw the bank statements you carelessly left lying around the house last week. You consolidated everything. You put every single dime of your liquid capital into our joint savings account. You wanted to strike a massive blow, but you left your entire war chest completely exposed." He points a finger at me, his chest puffing out with fabricated superiority. "I struck first," Julian declares, his voice ringing with absolute triumph. "Yesterday afternoon I went to the bank. I sat down with a wealth manager and I legally transferred the entire balance of that joint savings account. I moved $800,000 directly into a secure offshore account under Tasha's name. You have zero cash, Maya. You do not have a single penny to your name. You are holding a massive commercial building, but you have no liquidity. Do you have any idea what the commercial property taxes are on a skyscraper in this district? Do you know what the monthly maintenance fees and utility overheads look like? Good luck paying those commercial taxes, landlord. You are going to default by the end of the quarter. The city will seize the property, and you will be left with absolutely nothing. The tension in the room shatters. Brenda lets out a loud, breathless gasp of relief. The sheer panic that had gripped her just moments ago instantly evaporates. She realizes the money is still under her son's control, which means her parasitic lifestyle is safe. She begins to laugh, a harsh, grating sound that fills the room. I knew my son was a genius. Brenda cheers, clapping her hands together. I knew you were always 10 steps ahead of this street trash. You took her money right out from under her nose. That is what a real provider does. He protects his family. He secures the bag. You left her destitute, Julian. It is exactly what she deserves for trying to ruin our family. Vanessa bends down and scoops her cracked phone off the hardwood floor. Her face flushes with renewed, arrogant confidence. She looks at me and shakes her head in mock pity. You actually thought you could outsmart a chief executive officer, Vanessa sneers, crossing her arms over her emerald blazer. You put $800,000 into a joint account while planning a divorce. That is the most pathetic amateur mistake I have ever seen. You basically handed Julian a severance package. You funded your own destruction. Tasha decides it is her turn to claim the spotlight. She steps forward, slipping out from under Julian's arm. She holds her champagne glass in her left hand and pulls her designer smartphone from her pocket with her right. She unlocks the screen with a manicured thumb, navigates to her banking application, and holds the screen up high for everyone in the room to see. The bright digital display clearly shows the offshore account balance, $800,000. Take a good long look, Tasha says, her voice dripping with cruel satisfaction. This is what real security looks like. Julian and I have been talking about our future. We are not staying in this freezing, miserable city. We are moving to Florida. We are going to use your $800,000 to put a cash down payment on a beautiful modern villa in Miami. It has floor-to-ceiling windows, a private dock, and a pristine swimming pool. Tasha takes a slow, celebratory sip of her champagne, locking her eyes on mine. Every time I look out at the ocean, I am going to think of you, Maya. Tasha continues, her smile widening into a vicious smirk. Every time Julian and I host a party on our private terrace, we will raise a glass to your incredible stupidity. You bought us our dream house. You funded our perfect new life. You gave my son the future he deserves. You are going to be stuck here, freezing bankrupt and drowning in commercial tax debt while we are living like royalty on your dime. I really want to thank you for being so delightfully careless. Jamal steps forward, his chest puffed out again. The cowardice he showed when confronted by Trey's security team is momentarily forgotten. He feels safe behind his brother's newly announced wealth. You played yourself, Maya, Jamal barks, pointing at the door. You came in here trying to be the boss, but you are just a dependent who got her allowance cut off. You have no cash. You have no power. Now pick up your kid and get out of our office before I call the real cops and have you arrested for trespassing and corporate espionage. The chorus of insults and cruel laughter washes over me. They are a pack of hyenas, absolutely thrilled by the scent of what they perceive to be blood. They are convinced they have won. They are completely certain that Julian's masterstroke has left me paralyzed and defeated. They expect me to scream. They expect me to drop to my knees and beg for a fraction of my money back. They expect tears of devastation. I do not panic. I do not raise my voice. I do not shed a single tear. I just stand there letting their pathetic, predictable gloating echo through the shattered penthouse. I look down at Zuri. My beautiful daughter is standing patiently by my legs. Her wide, innocent eyes are scanning the room, trying to make sense of the loud voices and the aggressive body language of the people surrounding us. She does not need to hear this. She does not need to absorb the toxic, radioactive energy radiating from her so-called family. I gently squeeze her shoulder and kneel down on the ruined Persian rug. I take off my designer bag and place it on the floor. I unzip the main compartment and pull out Zuri's favorite pink tablet. I power it on, navigate directly to her favorite animated show, and press play. Then I pull out her bright pink noise-canceling headphones. "Here you go, sweetheart," I say, keeping my voice incredibly soft and warm, completely shielding her from the chaos of the room. I place the soft padded cups over her ears and hand her the tablet. "Watch your cartoons for a minute. Mommy is just finishing up some important business with these people, and then we are going to go get ice cream." Zuri smiles, her eyes instantly locking onto the colorful screen. The heavy industrial-grade headphones block out every single sound in the penthouse. She cannot hear Brenda's cackling. She cannot hear Tasha's gloating. She is completely insulated, wrapped in a safe, quiet bubble of my own making. I stand back up, taking a slow, deliberate breath. I smooth down the front of my tailored trousers and brush a speck of drywall dust from my sleeve. Trey watches me closely. His dark eyes are sharp and alert. He knows exactly what is coming. The 6 massive men in black suits, standing around the perimeter of the room, remain perfectly still, a silent wall of intimidation that my family is currently too foolish to acknowledge. I look at Tasha, who is still holding her phone in the air like a trophy. I look at Brenda, whose face is flushed with manic joy. I look at Vanessa and Jamal, who are standing shoulder to shoulder, vibrating with unearned triumph. Finally, I lock my gaze on Julian. He is standing with his arms crossed, a look of absolute arrogant superiority plastered across his face. He thinks he is untouchable. He thinks he is a mastermind. I let a cold, razor-sharp smile spread across my face. It is not a smile of defeat. It is the smile of an apex predator watching its prey step willingly into a steel trap. The absolute lack of panic in my demeanor causes Julian's smirk to falter. A tiny, microscopic sliver of doubt flashes in his eyes. He expected me to shatter, but I am standing taller than before. I take one slow, deliberate step forward, my heels crunching softly against the remaining shards of frosted glass on the floor. I tilt my head slightly, observing Julian with clinical detachment. "Julian," I ask, my voice smooth, quiet, and cutting through the tension like a scalpel. "You are a corporate executive. You understand banking. You understand financial protocols." I take another step, keeping my eyes locked dead on his. The silence in the room suddenly feels thick and heavy. "Tell me something, Julian." I continue, my tone dropping to a lethal, chilling whisper. "Did you ever wonder why a standard joint savings account had absolutely no withdrawal limits?" Julian's face twitches. The smug, venomous grin he wore just a second ago falters, replaced by a sudden sharp crease of confusion between his eyebrows. He blinks, his eyes darting back and forth, as his brain struggles to catch up to the reality I am currently laying out in front of him. He attempts to maintain his fabricated posture of absolute dominance, puffing out his chest and tightening his grip around Tasha's waist, but the physical manifestation of his panic is already betraying him. A bead of sweat forms at his temple. "I do not know what you are talking about," Julian snaps, his voice losing its deep, authoritative resonance. "It is a premium-tier joint savings account. I have the ledger. I saw the routing numbers. You are just talking in circles because you are completely broke and desperately trying to save face in front of my family." I do not argue with him. Arguing requires viewing the other person as an equal, and Julian is nothing but a mark who walked blindly into a meticulously designed snare. I reach into the pocket of my blazer and pull out my phone. The screen is already unlocked. I tap a single application icon. On the far wall of the penthouse suite, directly behind Julian's desk, hangs a massive 80-inch presentation monitor used for high-level corporate pitches. A soft electronic chime echoes through the room. The giant screen blinks to life, immediately syncing with my phone. The display illuminates the faces of my parasitic family members in a cold blue light. Every single person in the room turns their head. They cannot help themselves. Their greed and their inherent desperation command their attention. Displayed in massive high-definition text is the banking interface Julian thought he had so brilliantly conquered. But it is not the retail banking portal he assumed it was. It is a commercial lending dashboard. The Vanguard Creative corporate logo sits in the top left corner. Read the account classification at the top of the screen, Julian. I command, my voice echoing off the glass walls with absolute authority. Read it out loud for your mother. Read it out loud for your brilliant executive assistant. Tell them exactly what kind of account you drained yesterday afternoon. Julian lets go of Tasha. He takes a slow, heavy step toward the monitor. His eyes track the bold black letters at the top of the screen. His jaw goes completely slack. All the blood drains from his face, leaving him looking like a reanimated corpse. He opens his mouth, but his vocal cords refuse to function. The sheer magnitude of his catastrophic mistake is physically suffocating him. Since your reading comprehension seems to be failing you, I will gladly educate the room, I say, taking a step toward the center of the lounge. That was never a joint savings account, Julian. It was an unsecured high-yield corporate credit facility. It was a massive line of commercial debt established exclusively for Vanguard Creative. And because you insisted on being the sole master of your corporate universe, that credit line is legally bound to your personal signature and your individual social security number. Brenda lets out a sharp, breathless gasp. She does not fully grasp the intricate mechanics of commercial finance, but she possesses a rat-like survival instinct, and she can smell the impending devastation. Jamal takes a step backward, physically putting distance between himself and his brother. You see, Julian? I continue pacing slowly across the ruined Persian rug. I have known about Tasha for a very long time. I am not the blind, obedient, pathetic little housewife you convinced yourself I was. 6 months ago, I noticed the discrepancies in your schedule. I noticed the late nights, the mysterious weekend retreats, and the sudden drop in your personal account balances. Instead of crying about it, I hired one of the most ruthless private investigators in this city. Within 48 hours, I had a complete dossier on your pathetic double life. I knew about the hotel rooms. I knew about the expensive jewelry you were buying her while telling me we needed to tighten our budget. I even knew about your little fantasy of buying a luxury villa in Miami. Tasha clutches her phone against her chest, her eyes wide with mounting terror. She looks at Julian, desperately waiting for him to fix the situation, but Julian is paralyzed, staring at the presentation monitor as if it is a bomb strapped to his chest. I knew you were greedy, Julian, I say, shaking my head with a cold, predatory smile. I knew your greed was only matched by your absolute staggering incompetence. So I set a honey trap. I legally transferred the lease of this building to my holding company. I assumed direct control of Vanguard Creative's financial structures behind the scenes. Then I authorized an $800,000 corporate credit line and simply left the digital ledger sitting openly on the kitchen counter last week. I knew you would snoop. I knew you would see that massive number and assume it was liquid cash I was hiding for the divorce. I baited the trap with cheese and you snapped your own neck trying to eat it. Vanessa suddenly lets out a strangled, high-pitched noise. Her hands fly to her head, her acrylic nails digging into her scalp. Unlike Jamal and Brenda, Vanessa actually understands the corporate legal system. She understands exactly what I have just orchestrated. Oh my God! Vanessa hyperventilates, her knees visibly shaking. Oh my God, Julian, what did you do? Julian finally tears his eyes away from the screen and looks at me, his face twisting into a mask of pure, unadulterated panic. You set me up, he whispers, his voice trembling violently. You tricked me into taking that money. I did not trick you into doing anything, Julian, I reply, my voice dropping to a smooth, lethal register. I simply gave you access to a loaded weapon and watched you point it directly at your own head. You thought you were stealing from a scorned, helpless wife. You thought you were cleverly hiding marital assets in a messy divorce. If you had actually stolen my personal money, this would just be a messy civil dispute in family court. I take one final step toward him, closing the distance until I can see the terrified dilation of his pupils. But you did not steal my money, Julian, I say, pronouncing every single syllable with crushing clarity. You accessed a commercial banking portal. You utilized your status as a corporate officer to drain an $800,000 commercial credit line. You took federally insured institutional debt, and you initiated a wire transfer to an unverified offshore entity in the Bahamas under the name of a woman who is not a legal employee of this company. The silence in the penthouse is absolute. The gravity of my words crushes the remaining oxygen out of the room. Brenda grabs the back of the velvet sofa to keep from collapsing. You did not commit marital theft, Julian, I announce, projecting my voice so every parasite in the room hears their doom. You committed federal wire fraud. You committed commercial embezzlement. You engaged in international money laundering. You stole $800,000 from a federal bank, and you left a digital paper trail a mile wide. Julian's legs give out. He stumbles backward, his hip crashing against the edge of his mahogany desk. He scrambles for purchase, sending a stack of useless executive folders clattering to the floor. He is breathing in short, ragged gasps, his eyes darting frantically around the room looking for an exit that does not exist. Tasha realizes the Miami villa is gone. She realizes the luxury lifestyle she was promised is a total fabrication. She looks at Julian with absolute disgust, stepping away from him as if he is infected with a deadly virus. Suddenly, a loud, aggressive vibration shatters the quiet. Julian's phone is buzzing frantically inside the breast pocket of his expensive suit. It is a harsh, continuous vibration that sounds like a warning siren. He fumbles with the fabric, his hands shaking so violently he can barely grip the device. He pulls the phone out and stares at the screen. The reflection of the display casts a harsh red glow across his pale, sweating face. It is not a standard text message. It is an emergency push notification from his financial institution. The text is large, bold, and unmistakable. Assets frozen. Federal investigation pending. Julian drops the phone. It hits the hardwood floor with a sharp crack, the red alert still glowing brightly for everyone to see. He sinks down against the side of his desk, pulling his knees to his chest, utterly destroyed. Tasha screams. It is a high, piercing sound of sheer panic. She frantically taps the screen of her own designer smartphone, desperately trying to refresh her banking application. She punches in her password, her thumbs flying across the glass. The loading wheel spins for 2 agonizing seconds before a massive red banner drops across her screen. No, Tasha shrieks, slapping the side of her phone. No, it is locked. The offshore account is completely locked. I cannot access the funds. The transfer is frozen. She looks up at Julian, her face contorted with rage. You promised me this money was clean, she screams at him. You told me you knew what you were doing. I told you, Tasha, I say smoothly, turning my back on the pathetic display of their destruction and walking back over to where Zuri is standing. I gently place my hand on my daughter's head. She is completely engrossed in her cartoons, perfectly insulated by her noise-canceling headphones, unaware of the corporate execution that just took place. I look over my shoulder, offering my family one final chilling smile. I am not a struggling event planner. I am the landlord, and the rent is officially due. The red glow from Tasha's phone screen illuminates her face, casting long, harsh shadows that highlight the sudden sharp lines of panic around her mouth. She taps the screen again, her long acrylic nails clicking frantically against the glass. The result is exactly the same. The massive red banner warning of a federal investigation remains locked in place. The reality of the situation crashes down on her with the force of a falling anvil. She is not standing in the penthouse of a multi-millionaire chief executive officer who is about to sweep her away to a sun-drenched villa in Miami. She is standing in a ruined corporate suite next to a man who just committed federal wire fraud, and her name is on the receiving end of the illegal transfer. Tasha is not a ride-or-die partner. She is a calculating opportunist who recognized a mark, and she realizes instantly that the mark has just become radioactive. She shoves her phone deep into her designer handbag and aggressively zips it shut. She does not offer Julian a word of comfort. She does not reach down to help him off the hardwood floor. She looks at him with an expression of profound, unfiltered disgust. She reaches out and roughly grabs the 10-year-old boy by the wrist, pulling him forward so forcefully he nearly trips over his own feet. She turns her back on the man she was calling her future husband just 3 minutes ago and makes a straight, frantic beeline for the shattered glass doors. Jamal sees her moving. His brain, slow and desperate, finally registers what is happening. If Tasha leaves, the illusion is broken. If Tasha runs away, it means Julian has actually lost. And if Julian has lost, then Jamal's entire fake subsidized lifestyle is completely dead. Jamal cannot allow the fantasy to die. He needs his older brother to be the untouchable titan of industry so Jamal can continue playing the role of his wealthy right-hand man. Jamal lunges sideways, planting his cheap leather shoes squarely in the center of the doorway. He spreads his arms wide, blocking Tasha's exit. He puffs out his chest desperately, trying to summon the phantom authority he thinks he commands. "Where do you think you are going?" Jamal barks, his voice trembling with a mixture of fear and forced machismo. "Nobody is leaving this room. We stay together as a family. We hold the line. Julian is just having a temporary setback, and we are going to figure this out together. You are not walking out on my brother." Tasha stops glaring at Jamal as if he is an insect blocking her path. "Get out of my way, you broke, pathetic loser!" Tasha hisses, her voice dropping all pretense of sweetness. "Your brother is going to federal prison, and I am not going down with him. Move your cheap suit out of my face before I make you move." Before Jamal can respond, Vanessa absolutely explodes. The shock of discovering that I am the actual owner of the building, combined with the horrifying realization that her own husband is a complete financial fraud, finally breaks Vanessa's sanity. She marches across the room, her high heels stomping aggressively against the floorboards. She grabs Jamal by the shoulder and violently yanks him backward, spinning him around to face her. "Family." Vanessa screams, her voice echoing shrilly off the panoramic windows. "You want to talk about staying together as a family? You are a delusion, Jamal. You are a complete, staggering delusion." Jamal's eyes go wide. "Vanessa, lower your voice," he hisses, glancing nervously at Trey and the security team. "Do not do this right now. We need to project a united front." "There is no front!" Vanessa shrieks, pushing him hard in the chest with both hands. Jamal stumbles backward, completely emasculated. "You are a fraud. You have spent our entire marriage riding Julian's coattails, acting like you are some high-rolling investor when you cannot even balance a checking account. You told me you earned the down payment for our house with a massive corporate bonus. You lied to my face. You begged your brother for that money, and now we find out it was Maya subsidizing our entire pathetic existence." Vanessa does not stop. The floodgates are open and years of bitter marital resentment pour out into the room. She points a shaking manicured finger directly in Jamal's face. "You do not even own the car you drive," she yells, her face turning a blotchy, furious red. "The lease is under Julian's corporate account. Your country club membership is billed to Vanguard Creative. Every time you buy a round of drinks for your friends to look like a big shot, you use a credit card that Julian pays off. You are nothing but a leech. And now the host is dead, and you want to stand in a doorway and preach about family loyalty. You are pathetic. I am filing for divorce the second I get out of this building." Brenda, who has been leaning against the velvet sofa in a state of catatonic shock, suddenly snaps out of her trance. Hearing her precious youngest son being verbally eviscerated by his own wife is too much for her to bear. Her maternal instinct, toxic and misguided as it is, flares to life. She marches across the room, her heavy gold bracelets clanking loudly. "Do not you ever speak to my son that way," Brenda roars, inserting herself between Vanessa and Jamal. "You are a gold-digging, ungrateful brat. Jamal gave you a beautiful life. He gave you that house and those expensive clothes. You should be down on your knees thanking him instead of screaming like a fishwife." Vanessa turns her furious, unblinking gaze onto her mother-in-law. She laughs, a harsh, grating sound that holds absolutely no humor. "Thank him for what?" Vanessa sneers, stepping right into the older woman's personal space. "Thank him for lying to me. Thank him for being a useless, broke parasite. And do not you dare stand there and act like the righteous matriarch. You raised two incompetent, narcissistic men who do not know how to survive without a woman footing the bill. You pretend you are high class, but you are just as fake as they are. You are an old, bitter woman defending a sinking ship." Brenda gasps, clutching her chest as if she has been physically struck. She raises her hand fully intending to slap Vanessa across the face, but Vanessa catches her wrist in midair, shoving Brenda's arm away with brutal force. "Touch me again, and I will break your arm." Vanessa threatens, her voice dropping to a dangerous, violent growl. The implosion is absolute. The pristine, untouchable facade of the perfect corporate family has completely disintegrated into a trashy, vicious screaming match in the middle of a destroyed lobby. Jamal is shouting at Vanessa. Vanessa is screaming at Brenda. Brenda is wailing about disrespect. Tasha uses the distraction to slip past Jamal, dragging the boy toward the freight elevator, abandoning Julian without a single backward glance. I stand perfectly still in the center of the room, a silent conductor presiding over a symphony of total destruction. I do not feel anger anymore. I do not feel sadness. I feel a profound, overwhelming sense of peace. I watch the people who tormented me, who mocked my miscarriages, who tried to throw me out on the street, tear each other limb from limb. They did not require my interference to fall apart. They only required the truth. I look down at my side. Zuri is sitting cross-legged on the floor, her eyes glued to the bright screen of her tablet. She is softly giggling at the animated characters, completely insulated from the venomous chaos erupting just 10 feet away. The heavy pink noise-canceling headphones are doing their job perfectly. She is safe. She is protected. She is untouched by their poison. I reach down and gently stroke the soft braids on the top of her head. A slow scraping sound draws my attention back to the mahogany desk. Julian is finally moving. He pushes himself up from the floor, his movements stiff and uncoordinated. His expensive tailored suit is covered in fine white drywall dust. His silk tie is pulled loose, hanging crookedly around his neck. He looks at his mother weeping and shouting. He looks at his brother shrinking under his wife's verbal assault. He looks toward the hallway, realizing Tasha has already vanished into the elevators. Julian has lost everything. He has lost the $800,000. He has lost his position of corporate power. He has lost his mistress. He knows he is facing a federal indictment for wire fraud, and he knows his own family is currently too busy destroying each other to offer him a single shred of support. He is a cornered, desperate animal, and cornered animals always lash out with whatever weapon they have left. Julian slowly turns his head, his bloodshot eyes locking onto me. The panic and terror that had him hyperventilating on the floor are suddenly gone, replaced by a cold, venomous spite. He realizes he cannot hurt me financially. He knows he cannot hurt me professionally. I hold all the cards, all the deeds, and all the power. But as his eyes track downward, landing on the small, innocent figure of our daughter, sitting happily on the ruined Persian rug, his expression twists into a mask of pure malice. He finds his angle. He finds the one vulnerability he thinks he can exploit. He straightens his posture, ignoring the dust on his suit. He takes a step forward, raising his arm and pointing a shaking, accusatory finger directly at my face. "You think you have won this?" Maya Julian says, his voice raspy, but echoing clearly over the sounds of his family arguing. "You think you can take my money and my building and just walk away clean? You think you can ruin my life and leave me with nothing?" He takes another step, his eyes burning with a desperate, terrifying hatred. "I am taking Zuri!" Julian declares, his voice dropping into a harsh, threatening snarl. "I am taking my daughter. I will drag you through family court until you have nothing left. I will file for emergency custody today." Julian lunges forward. His movement is erratic and clumsy, driven entirely by blind panic and a desperate need to reclaim control over a situation that has spectacularly slipped through his fingers. His hand shoots out, his fingers wrapping tightly around my forearm. The grip is painful, his manicured nails digging into the premium fabric of my tailored blazer. It is the first time in our entire marriage, throughout all the lies and the subtle manipulations, that he has ever laid a hand on me in anger. The physical contact is a jarring violation, a desperate crossing of a boundary he can never uncross. Before I can even process the physical contact, before I can even formulate the command for him to let go, a massive shadow falls over us. Trey is moving. He does not shout a warning. He does not issue a verbal threat. The imposing man simply steps forward, the shattered glass and ruined floorboards groaning under his sudden aggressive shift in weight. He cracks his knuckles, a sharp, violent sound that echoes through the cavernous penthouse suite like a gunshot. The 6 security operatives standing around the perimeter of the room immediately tense. Their posture shifts from passive observation to active engagement, their hands dropping toward their tactical belts, their eyes locking onto Julian with lethal, unblinking intent. Julian freezes instantly. The bravado drains out of him as he stares up at the sheer physical mass of the man preparing to tear him apart. He suddenly realizes he has made a fatal miscalculation. I do not flinch. I do not pull away from Julian's grasp. I simply raise my left hand, holding my palm flat in the air. Stand down, Trey. I command, my voice low and completely steady. Do not touch him. Trey stops dead in his tracks. His heavy jaw clenches, a thick muscle ticking violently in his cheek, but he obeys perfectly. He takes one reluctant half-step backward, his dark eyes burning holes directly through Julian's skull. The unspoken message is crystal clear. Julian is breathing on borrowed time, entirely dependent on my grace and my explicit orders. I look down at Julian's hand, still clutching my sleeve, and then up into his terrified eyes. Let go of me, Julian, I say, pronouncing each word with glacial, terrifying precision. If you ever touch me again, I will not stop him. Julian snatches his hand back as if my blazer suddenly caught fire. He stumbles backward, nearly tripping over a piece of broken drywall, creating a safe distance between himself and Trey. But his desperation is a sickness, a terminal disease that completely overrides his basic survival instincts. He cannot accept total defeat. He has to find a way to hurt me, to regain the upper hand, to prove he is still the master of this dying universe. You think you can just walk away with my daughter? Julian spits out, his chest heaving as he struggles to catch his breath. You think any family court judge in this state is going to hand over primary custody to a woman running a criminal enterprise? I know exactly who you are, Maya. I see the people you surround yourself with. He points a shaking, accusatory finger at Trey, then sweeps his arm in a wide arc to encompass the silent, heavily armed security team. Look at this, Julian sneers, his voice growing louder, fueled by his own toxic, desperate delusions. You bring street thugs into my corporate office. You associate with known criminals. Do you honestly think I will let my child be raised in that kind of environment? Tasha and I are going to provide a real traditional home. We are going to raise Zuri in a safe, respectable, high-class environment. I am going to tell the judge everything. I am going to testify under oath that you are running an illicit empire behind the scenes. I will tell them you use shell companies to launder money for your thug brother. I will get full exclusive custody of Zuri, and I will make sure you only see her through supervised visitation behind bulletproof glass. It is a staggering display of weaponized prejudice. He is cornered, facing an imminent federal indictment for his own massive financial crimes, yet he is automatically defaulting to the oldest, most pathetic stereotypes imaginable. He assumes that because I am a successful, powerful minority woman with a fiercely loyal, intimidating security team, I must be operating outside the boundaries of the law. He is trying to leverage his fabricated corporate status and his gender to paint me as an unfit, dangerous mother. And the most disgusting part is that he actually believes his performance will work. Suddenly, Vanessa steps forward out of the periphery. Just minutes ago, she was screaming at Jamal, threatening an immediate divorce, tearing down the very foundation of their marriage. But Vanessa is a creature of pure, unadulterated opportunism. She is a scavenger, and she recognizes a sudden shift in the wind. She sees Julian deploying a legal strategy, a scorched earth tactic that could potentially secure him a massive child support payout or alimony if he miraculously wins custody. Vanessa does not care about Julian. She certainly does not care about Zuri's well-being. She only cares about aligning herself with whoever might emerge from this wreckage with access to a paycheck. She straightens her emerald blazer, smoothing down the front, to regain a shred of her manufactured composure. She crosses her arms tightly over her chest, stepping up to stand shoulder to shoulder with Julian. She tilts her chin upward, her eyes narrowing as she looks at me with absolute undisguised malice. Julian is exactly right. Vanessa declares, her voice ringing out with a sharp, artificial authority. And he is not going to be alone in that courtroom, Maya. I will testify for Julian. Jamal looks at his wife in shock, completely bewildered by her sudden change in loyalty. But he keeps his mouth shut, perfectly content to let her do the dirty work while he hides in the background. I will gladly take the stand. Vanessa continues, taking another aggressive step forward, emboldened by her own malicious lies. I will tell the family court exactly what kind of mother you are. I will swear under oath that I have personally witnessed you bringing drug dealers and violent criminals around that innocent child. I will tell the judge about your erratic behavior, the dangerous individuals you actively associate with, and the unstable, toxic environment you create at home. She pauses, letting a cruel, condescending smirk spread slowly across her face. Let us be honest about how the real world works. Maya, Vanessa sneers, her voice dripping with pure venom. Let us see exactly who the judge believes. Are they going to believe a successful white corporate professional and his upstanding, educated family? Or are they going to believe a woman surrounded by street thugs running an untraceable cash business? You have no formal education on paper. You have no respectable corporate pedigree. You just have a lot of dark money and a pack of intimidating guards. You will lose Maya. You will lose custody of that little girl, and we will make sure Julian gets exactly what he is entitled to. The sheer audacity of her threat hangs heavy in the ruined air of the penthouse. It is a masterpiece of perjury, a calculated racist classist lie designed entirely to destroy my life, strip me of my wealth, and steal my child. Brenda claps her hands together, the loud, sharp sound cutting right through the heavy tension. She nods her head vigorously, her face lighting up with a vindictive, triumphant smile. The panic of losing the corporate money is temporarily forgotten in the face of this new malicious strategy. That is exactly right, Vanessa. Brenda cheers, her voice grating and shrill. Finally, somebody is talking some sense. We stick together. We are an upstanding, respectable family. We will all testify. We will tell the courts exactly what kind of trash you really are, Maya. You thought you could come in here and steal Julian's company, but you are going to lose the only thing you actually care about. My son is going to take that baby, and he is going to raise her right. They are feeding off each other, building a towering fortress of lies and delusion, completely convinced that their inherent societal privilege and fabricated respectability will serve as an impenetrable shield in a court of law. They believe they can simply walk into a federal building, spin a racist, classist narrative, and legally kidnap my daughter. They view Zuri not as a human being, not as a child who needs love, stability, and protection, but merely as a weapon. She is a pawn they fully intend to use to punish me for exposing their massive financial fraud. I do not scream at them. I do not defend my legitimate business empire or my brother's character. I do not attempt to justify my immense wealth or explain the unshakable, airtight legal foundations of my holding company. Instead, I let a profound, absolute, and suffocating silence descend over the entire room. I look at Brenda, her face flushed with spite and unearned victory. I look at Julian, panting, desperate, and clinging to this final pathetic lifeline. And then I look directly at Vanessa. I look at her with an expression of pure, unadulterated pity. It is the exact kind of clinical pity one reserves for a creature that is completely unaware it has just stepped on a landmine. The total lack of fear in my eyes causes Vanessa's cruel smirk to waver. The manufactured confidence instantly drains from her rigid posture. She expected me to panic. She expected me to beg for mercy. I slowly reach into the front pocket of my tailored trousers. My hand closes around a small, cold metallic object. I pull it out and hold it up between my thumb and forefinger for everyone to see. It is a sleek silver USB drive. It catches the ambient light filtering in from the panoramic windows, glinting sharply in the tense, silent atmosphere of the penthouse. Trey steps forward again, but this time his hands are empty of violence. He is holding a small, high-end digital voice recorder, the exact kind used for professional legal depositions and unassailable court evidence. He plugs the silver USB drive directly into the base of the device and hands it to me. I hold the recorder flat in my palm, my thumb resting gently but purposefully over the play button. "You are going to testify that you are an upstanding, loving family," I say, my voice impossibly quiet, cutting through the dead air like a surgical scalpel. "You are going to swear under penalty of perjury that Julian and his mother provide a safe, loving, traditional home for my daughter." I take one slow, deliberate step toward Vanessa. She automatically takes a step back, her eyes fixed in terror on the silver drive. "Before you walk into a federal courthouse and commit perjury, Vanessa," I whisper, my eyes locking onto hers with terrifying, absolute intensity, "you might want to hear exactly what Julian's real family actually thinks of my daughter." I press play. I press play. The massive 80-inch presentation monitor shifts instantly from the frozen commercial banking dashboard to a stark black screen displaying a pulsing green audio waveform. The corporate surround sound system in the penthouse is pristine. Every single breath, every rustle of fabric, every whispered word is broadcast with terrifying crystal-clear high definition. The recording is from exactly 3 days ago. Julian had suddenly demanded to take Zuri to the park for the afternoon. He had stood in our kitchen adjusting his expensive watch, claiming he desperately needed some quality father and daughter bonding time. He played the part of the devoted family man to absolute perfection. What he did not know was that I had already slipped a micro-motion-activated nanny camera deep into the side lining of Zuri's pink diaper bag. The audio begins. The sound of park swings creaking and distant traffic humming in the background is unmistakable. Then Tasha's voice cuts through the ambient noise. It is not the sweet, high-pitched, manipulative tone she uses when trying to impress Julian's mother. It is her real voice, cold, calculating, and dripping with absolute greed. "As soon as we get full custody, we ship the brat to a cheap boarding school in Idaho." Tasha's recorded voice echoes off the glass walls of the penthouse. "We cash out her entire college trust fund to pay for my son's private academy. We are not wasting our money raising another woman's kid." A second of recorded silence follows. The entire penthouse holds its collective breath. Then comes Julian's response. He does not hesitate. He does not defend his own flesh and blood. "Whatever it takes, babe." Julian's voice replies, eager and pathetic over the speakers. "I am handling the lawyers. We will have her money and be out of this miserable city before the end of the year." I tap the screen of my phone, pausing the playback. The green waveform freezes, locking the horrific betrayal into the heavy air of the suite. The room goes completely suffocatingly dead. The sheer unadulterated depravity of the recording paralyzes every single person in the suite. Vanessa, who just seconds ago proudly threatened to commit perjury to secure Julian's custody claim, suddenly looks physically ill. The color completely drains from her face. She stares at the floor, unable to meet my eyes, realizing she just volunteered to stand in a federal courtroom and facilitate the theft of a child's college fund to enrich a mistress. Jamal takes another heavy step backward, his mouth hanging open, entirely stripped of his false bravado. I look directly at Brenda. For a microscopic fraction of a second, I see genuine discomfort flash across Brenda's heavily powdered face. Even her toxic, twisted maternal instincts recognize that shipping a little girl away to a cheap institution to steal her trust fund crosses a line of basic human decency. She swallows hard, her throat working anxiously as she looks from the frozen monitor to her eldest son. But Brenda is fundamentally incapable of admitting defeat. Her vanity and her desperate need to crown Julian as the supreme patriarch completely override her momentary lapse into morality. She forcefully shakes her head, physically rejecting the reality of the audio recording. She glares at me, her eyes burning with stubborn, irrational defiance. "It is fine!" Brenda shouts, her voice harsh and desperate as she breaks the heavy silence. Julian has every right to prioritize his new household. He still has his real son. He still has his bloodline to think about. Brenda points a dramatic, shaking finger directly at Tasha's 10-year-old boy. The child is standing near the freight elevator, still clutching his mother's sleeve, looking entirely terrified by the screaming adults. That is Julian's true heir, Brenda declares, doubling down on her delusion, raising her chin in a pathetic display of aristocratic pride. That is the boy who is going to carry on the family name. Julian is just protecting his real legacy. You cannot fault a man for protecting his own blood. I look at Brenda with absolute unfiltered pity. Her entire existence is built on a foundation of lies she eagerly swallows to maintain her fragile ego. Then I turn my attention back to Julian. He is standing near his mahogany desk, pale and sweating, his chest heaving, as the walls of his fabricated empire close in around him. I reach into the interior pocket of my tailored blazer. I do not pull out a phone or a USB drive this time. I pull out a thick, sealed white envelope bearing the distinct embossed logo of a premier private medical laboratory. I step up to Julian's desk. I toss the envelope. It slides smoothly across the remaining shards of shattered glass, coming to a dead stop exactly 1 inch from Julian's trembling hands. About your grand legacy, I say, my voice smooth and utterly devoid of emotion. You left a lot of things lying around during your careless weekend excursions. Specifically, you left that boy's toothbrush rolling around in the backseat of your car last month. Julian stares at the white envelope as if it is a venomous snake preparing to strike. He does not want to touch it. He knows instinctively that whatever is inside that thick paper is going to be the final fatal blow to his ego. I ran a verified clinical DNA test, Julian Fry announced, projecting my voice so every single parasite in the room can hear the execution clearly. I compared the genetic markers on that toothbrush directly to the DNA profile you had on file for your premium health insurance policy. Open it. Julian's hands shake violently as he reaches for the envelope. He tears the flap open, his breathing escalating into a rapid, ragged hyperventilation. He pulls out the single sheet of thick watermarked paper. His eyes dart down to the results section printed in heavy black ink. I watch the exact second his reality shatters into a million irreparable pieces. His eyes widen so far I can see the whites all the way around his irises. His jaw drops completely open. 0% biological match, I state, delivering the verdict out loud so no one in the room can deny it. Read the numbers, Julian. 0%. Tasha has been playing you for 10 entire years. You are not the father. A collective gasp rips through the room. Brenda lets out a loud, strangled wail, her hands flying to her face in absolute horror. The grand, precious bloodline she just proudly defended is nothing but a 10-year-long grift. Tasha freezes by the elevator doors, her face turning chalk white. She does not deny it. She does not scream in protest. She simply turns and hits the elevator call button with frantic, desperate strikes. She knows the con is up, and she is already calculating her next mark. You destroyed your marriage, Julian. I continue stepping closer to him, lowering my voice to a lethal driving cadence. You committed federal wire fraud. You embezzled $800,000 from a corporate lending facility. You threw away your entire future, your freedom, and your actual daughter for a woman who saw you coming a mile away. You are nothing but an easy mark. Julian drops the medical report. The paper flutters lazily through the air, landing face up on the ruined rug for all to see. He collapses backward into his high-backed leather executive chair. He clutches his chest, gasping for air, fully hyperventilating. His eyes roll back wildly. He has lost his money, his freedom, his mistress, and his legacy in the span of 15 minutes. He is a broken, hollow shell of a man. But Julian is driven by a toxic, blinding ambition that refuses to simply die quietly. The sheer narcissistic survival instinct buried deep inside his brain suddenly and violently kicks in. He refuses to accept that he has been entirely outplayed by his own wife. His eyes snap open wide and bloodshot. A manic, terrifying energy seizes his entire body. He bolts upright out of the leather chair, knocking it backward into the glass wall with a loud crash. The board meeting, Julian shouts, his voice cracking with desperate, unhinged hysteria. The shareholders are upstairs right now. They are voting on my official promotion. He scrambles around the desk, his expensive shoes slipping wildly on the broken glass. He ignores his mother, who is weeping loudly on the sofa. He ignores Jamal and Vanessa, who are staring at him in complete shock. He completely ignores Tasha, who finally manages to pry the elevator doors open and vanishes into the hallway. If they vote, yes, I get the official Chief Executive Officer title, Julian yells, sprinting frantically toward the heavy oak doors leading to the main corporate stairwell. If I get the title, I get full executive clearance. I can open a new line of corporate credit. I can pay off the federal bank. I can fix this. Julian spins around his dress shoes, slipping frantically against the broken glass on the floor. The absolute soul-crushing reality of his imminent federal indictment has completely shattered his fragile ego, but his toxic, blinding ambition refuses to let him simply surrender. He operates on pure, unadulterated desperation. His brain frantically searches for a loophole, a magical exit strategy that will somehow restore his fabricated corporate throne. He completely ignores Tasha's sudden departure. He ignores his mother sobbing on the ruined velvet sofa. He spots the heavy double doors leading out of the penthouse and sprints toward them like a man running from a blazing inferno. He is running for his literal life. He shoves past the shattered remains of a glass coffee table, his chest heaving with ragged, frantic breaths. His expensive, custom-tailored suit is covered in a thick layer of white drywall dust. His silk tie hangs crookedly around his neck, utterly ruined by his physical collapse moments earlier. The board meeting, Julian shouts over his shoulder, his voice cracking with a manic, unhinged hysteria. The shareholders are upstairs right now. They are voting on my official promotion. He reaches the heavy doors and tears them open, practically throwing himself into the main corridor. He knows that if he can just secure the official title of Chief Executive Officer, he will gain full executive clearance. In his deeply disturbed, panicked mind, he believes that securing that title will allow him to open a brand new line of corporate credit, pay off the missing $800,000 to the federal bank, and miraculously fix this entire catastrophic disaster. Brenda, Jamal, and Vanessa watch him sprint down the hallway. It takes them exactly 3 seconds to realize that their entire financial existence is sprinting away from them. If Julian fails to secure that promotion, the corporate credit cards are instantly deactivated. The leased luxury vehicles are repossessed. The country club memberships are canceled. The lavish, subsidized lifestyle they have enjoyed for years will evaporate into thin air. Brenda forces herself up from the sofa, her knees cracking as she ignores the sharp pain in her joints. Jamal and Vanessa, temporarily abandoning their vicious marital dispute, instantly follow her lead. They are a pack of desperate, starving scavengers terrified of losing their only remaining meal ticket. They scramble toward the doors, tripping over each other in their frantic haste, completely ignoring the destruction they leave behind in the penthouse. They shove past one another, rushing into the corridor to chase after the sinking ship that is Julian. I watch them go with absolute clinical detachment. I do not run. Queens do not run. I take a slow, deliberate breath, letting the chaotic noise of their departure fade into the distance. I kneel down on the rug and gently lift Zuri into my arms. She wraps her small arms around my neck, resting her head softly against my shoulder. Her heavy pink noise-canceling headphones are still firmly in place. She is perfectly safe, perfectly insulated, and completely untouched by the radioactive toxicity of her father's family. I stand up tall, securing her weight against my hip, and I catch Trey's eye. Trey gives me a single sharp nod of absolute respect. He reaches up and taps the concealed communication earpiece hidden in his ear, signaling the rest of the security operatives. We do not follow my desperate family toward the crowded main lobby elevators. Instead, I turn and walk down a quiet, pristine, glass-lined corridor located at the far end of the suite. We approach a heavy, unmarked steel door. This is the private executive elevator, a highly secure lift reserved exclusively for the primary building owner and senior stakeholders. I press my thumb against the biometric scanner mounted on the wall. The green light flashes, and the heavy doors glide open silently. Trey steps in behind me, standing like an impenetrable wall of muscle. The ascent to the 40th floor is perfectly smooth, swift, and entirely silent. 40 floors above the city streets, the Vanguard Creative Executive Boardroom is a sanctuary of corporate power. The walls are paneled in rich, dark mahogany. Massive panoramic windows offer a breathtaking, unobstructed view of the sprawling metropolis below. In the center of the room sits a gigantic polished oak table crafted from a single continuous piece of wood. 6 major shareholders are seated around the table. They are men and women of serious wealth, clad in immaculate business attire, silently reviewing thick leather-bound financial dossiers. The atmosphere in the room is heavy, disciplined, and utterly ruthless. Suddenly, the main double doors of the boardroom violently crash open. Julian bursts into the room. He is a staggering, catastrophic mess. Sweat pours down his pale forehead, stinging his bloodshot eyes. His chest heaves uncontrollably. He leaves a trail of white drywall dust on the pristine corporate carpeting. He grips the edge of the doorway to keep himself from completely collapsing, looking like a deranged madman who has just escaped from an asylum. The 6 shareholders look up from their dossiers. They do not flinch. They do not gasp. They stare at Julian with expressions of cold, calculating shock. Julian attempts to salvage the situation. He frantically tries to smooth down his ruined suit jacket and attempts to straighten his crooked silk tie with violently shaking hands. He forces a manic, terrifyingly fake smile onto his face and marches toward the center of the room, launching directly into a desperate, unhinged monologue. "Ladies and gentlemen," Julian pants, his voice loud and incredibly strained. "I apologize for the dramatic entrance. There is a slight temporary domestic disturbance occurring downstairs. My wife is unfortunately experiencing a severe mental breakdown. She is completely unstable. She is currently running around the building making wild, fabricated accusations in a desperate attempt to sabotage my career and ruin my promotion." He places both hands flat on the polished oak table, leaning heavily toward the board members. Sweat drips from his chin onto the pristine wood. "I beg you to ignore any ridiculous rumors you might hear in the coming days," Julian rambles, his eyes darting frantically from face to face. "I am entirely dedicated to this company. I am the only man capable of leading Vanguard Creative into the next lucrative decade. I am ready to assume the mantle of Chief Executive Officer. I demand we proceed with the official vote immediately so I can secure my rightful title and handle a very minor, highly classified banking glitch that requires my immediate executive clearance." The shareholders do not nod in agreement. They do not offer him a single syllable of sympathy. They sit perfectly still, staring at him as if he is a fascinating diseased specimen under a microscope. At the far end of the heavy oak table sits the board chairman. He is a stern, silver-haired man with sharp, unforgiving eyes who has spent 40 years orchestrating ruthless corporate acquisitions. The chairman does not react to Julian's frantic, sweaty energy. He does not even look at Julian's face. Instead, the chairman looks completely past him, his sharp gaze fixing firmly on the frosted glass doors located at the rear of the executive boardroom. The chairman slowly stands up. He buttons his tailored suit jacket with a gesture of absolute formal respect. He steps away from the massive leather chair at the head of the table, turning his body and deferring his seat entirely. The frosted glass doors slide open smoothly. I step into the boardroom. My heels click rhythmically and powerfully against the polished marble floor. The sudden shift in the room's atmospheric pressure is immediate and crushing. Julian whips his head around to follow the chairman's respectful gaze. When his bloodshot eyes land on me, his vocal cords completely seize. The manic, desperate rambling dies instantly in his throat. He takes a staggering, unsteady step backward, his hip crashing hard against the edge of the conference table. All the color permanently drains from his face. He stops breathing. I walk right past him, as if he is nothing more than an unpleasant draft of cold air. I turn and gently hand Zuri over to Trey. Trey accepts her, carefully stepping backward, to stand like an immovable mountain of stone by the door, completely shielding my daughter from the impending corporate slaughter. I walk to the head of the oak table. I sit down in the chairman's oversized leather chair. The soft, expensive creak of the leather is the only sound echoing in the cavernous room. I fold my hands neatly on top of the polished wood, looking down the length of the table with total, absolute authority. Just as I settle into the throne of Vanguard Creative, the main doors burst open again. Brenda, Jamal, and Vanessa stumble blindly into the boardroom. They are completely out of breath, their chests heaving from their chaotic, panicked sprint up the 40 flights of stairs. Brenda is panting loudly, her face flushed red. She has her hands raised, fully prepared to shout at the board, fully prepared to aggressively defend her golden child against any perceived slight. But the words die instantly in her mouth. She freezes in absolute paralyzing horror. Jamal and Vanessa collide heavily into her back, stopping dead in their tracks as they finally process the impossible scene in front of them. Maya, the woman they have verbally abused, belittled, and mocked for years, is sitting at the absolute center of corporate power, commanding the silent, unwavering respect of the entire Vanguard shareholder board. I let them marinate in their suffocating terror for a long, agonizing moment. I slowly turn my gaze back to Julian. He is visibly trembling, his knuckles turning stark white as he grips the edge of the table to keep his legs from completely giving out. Julian, I say, my voice ringing out clearly and echoing off the rich mahogany walls. You seem to be operating under a massive fatal delusion. The board is not gathering today to vote on your promotion. I pause, letting my eyes sweep slowly over the 6 seated shareholders. Every single one of them offers me a slight deferential nod of acknowledgement. They are gathering to vote on my official motion to fully liquidate your shares and terminate your employment with immediate cause, I announce, delivering the verdict with crushing finality. Julian lets out a choked, desperate, animalistic sound. He shakes his head frantically, physically refusing to process the words I have just spoken. You cannot do that, he whispers, his voice cracking and utterly broken. You do not have the voting power. You are just my wife. You are just a housewife. I am not just your wife, Julian, I correct him, my tone dropping to a smooth, lethal register. I pull a thick black leather folder from my designer bag and toss it firmly onto the center of the oak table. I am the anonymous majority shareholder who executed the hostile takeover of Vanguard Creative exactly 6 months ago. The silence in the room deepens, thick enough to choke on. While you were spending your weekends draining our personal accounts to buy expensive jewelry for Tasha, I explain, watching the life completely drain from his eyes. I was quietly buying up every single outstanding piece of debt this company owed. I bought out your silent partners. I acquired 68% of the total voting shares through my private holding company. I own the building you are standing in. I own the corporate brand you boast about. And as of this exact second, I own you. The reality of his total destruction finally lands with the weight of a collapsing skyscraper. The impending federal investigation for wire fraud, the frozen bank accounts, the loss of his mistress, and now the total irreversible evaporation of his corporate identity. The invisible, arrogant strings holding Julian together completely snap. He drops heavily to his knees. The sound of his kneecaps hitting the polished marble floor is loud, sharp, and profoundly pathetic. He grabs the edge of the oak table with shaking hands, looking up at me with tears streaming down his dusty, sweat-stained face. Please, Maya. Julian sobs, weeping openly in front of the entire board of directors. Please do not do this. I will do anything. I will sign whatever you want. I beg you, do not take my job. Do not send me to prison. I will be a better man. I am so sorry. It is the ultimate sickening humiliation of a broken narcissist. Brenda watches her golden child shatter into a million pieces on the floor. Her toxic survival instinct immediately flares into overdrive. She realizes in a split second that all the money, all the power, and all the security she so desperately craves now belong exclusively to the woman she has tormented for years. She instantly shifts gears, executing the most repulsive, transparent, emotional pivot imaginable. She pushes aggressively past Jamal and Vanessa, rushing forward toward the head of the conference table. Tears of entirely fabricated remorse flood her eyes. She holds her arms out wide, reaching for me, as if she desperately wants to pull me into a loving maternal embrace. Maya, my beautiful daughter Brenda, cries out, her voice dripping with a fake, sickening desperation that makes my skin crawl. We were totally blind. We were completely manipulated by that evil, wicked woman Tasha. She cast a terrible spell on my son. She forced him to do those awful things. We never wanted this. You are our real family, Maya. We love you so much. You and Zuri are all that matters to us in this world. Please, you have to forgive us. We can be a real loving family again. I look at this woman who just hours ago called me street trash and cheered at the prospect of me going bankrupt. I look at Jamal and Vanessa, who are staring at me with hungry, terrified eyes, desperately praying that Brenda's pathetic performance will magically secure their monthly allowance. I look down at Julian, weeping uncontrollably like a frightened child on the marble floor. I do not feel a single ounce of mercy. I feel completely, wonderfully clean. I raise my right hand, holding my palm flat, stopping Brenda dead in her tracks before she can take another step toward me. I slowly turn my gaze to the pair of massive, heavily armed building security guards standing at strict attention by the main double doors. I do not raise my voice. I do not show a single ounce of emotion. Throw the trash out, I command. The two massive security guards move with terrifying mechanical efficiency. They do not hesitate, and they certainly do not ask for permission. They cross the mahogany floor in heavy synchronized strides. One guard grabs Julian by the collar of his ruined, dust-covered suit jacket, hauling him violently off his knees. Julian kicks and thrashes his expensive designer shoes, scuffing the polished marble, but his sobbing resistance is entirely futile against the sheer physical power of the operative. He is hoisted into the air, dangling like a discarded marionette. The other guard flanks Brenda. She lets out a shrill, piercing shriek as he clamps a massive, unyielding hand onto her shoulder, physically turning her away from the conference table. She tries to dig her heels into the floor, but the guard simply marches her forward, treating her like an unruly trespasser. Jamal and Vanessa do not require physical force. They are completely paralyzed by the shock of their new, destitute reality. They stumble backward toward the frosted glass doors, their eyes wide with disbelief as they watch the golden child being dragged away like a sack of garbage. The guards march them all out of the boardroom and toward the executive elevator. Brenda screams threats and obscenities, her voice cracking as she demands to speak to the authorities, threatening to sue everyone in the building. Her desperate words bounce harmlessly off the silent, impassive faces of the board members who watch the spectacle with cold corporate detachment. The heavy steel doors of the elevator slide shut, cutting off her shrill cries and sealing their absolute fate. Down in the main lobby, the scene is a chaotic masterpiece of destruction. Julian is shoved out of the elevator banks, stumbling hard into the open atrium. Tasha is standing near the revolving glass doors. She has not run away yet. She is waiting, clutching her designer handbag, trying to calculate if there is anything left to salvage from this disaster. When she sees Julian hauled out in disgrace, covered in drywall dust, and weeping openly, she knows the con is officially dead. The money is gone. Julian reaches out to her, a pathetic, wet gasp escaping his lips. He seeks comfort from the woman who orchestrated his ruin, desperate for a single ally in a world that has just turned entirely against him. Tasha does not offer a warm embrace. She steps forward, planting her feet firmly on the tile, and delivers a vicious, open-handed slap across Julian's face. The sharp crack echoes loudly through the cavernous lobby. She glares at him with absolute, unfiltered disgust. She curses him loudly, calling him a weak, incompetent mark. She screams that he was supposed to secure the money before getting caught. Furious that he wasted 10 years of her life only to end up completely broke. Without another word, she grabs her son by the wrist, turns on her heel, and marches out the glass doors. She disappears into the crowded city streets, vanishing instantly to find her next wealthy victim. Julian falls to his knees again, clutching his stinging cheek, but his ultimate humiliation has not yet peaked. The heavy glass doors slide open one more time. 4 individuals in dark windbreakers step purposefully into the lobby. The gold lettering on their jackets spells out Federal Bureau of Investigation in bold, unforgiving print. They do not stop at the reception desk. They move directly toward Julian with terrifying, coordinated speed. The lead agent grabs Julian by the arm and hauls him up, reciting his Miranda rights in a flat, mechanical voice. He cites the exact federal statute for wire fraud and the embezzlement of $800,000 from a corporate lending facility. Cold steel handcuffs snap shut around Julian's wrists. The definitive metallic click echoes through the lobby, serving as the final gavel drop on his freedom. Julian's knees buckle, but the agents hold him upright, dragging him out the doors toward a waiting black SUV. Brenda drops to the floor, wailing uncontrollably, thrashing her hands against the polished tile as she watches her golden son hauled away to federal prison. The fallout over the next 7 days is swift, precise, and entirely devastating. Vanessa and Jamal attempt to return to their upscale suburban home, fully expecting to hide from the scandal and figure out a new way to leech off the system. Instead, they find a county sheriff's deputy standing on their pristine front porch. A bright orange eviction notice is securely taped to their heavy oak front door. For years, Jamal boasted about his financial prowess, pretending he earned the down payment through hard work and massive corporate bonuses. In reality, he had leveraged everything through a shady subprime lender, constantly relying on Julian to cover the gaps. When the scandal broke, I simply instructed my proxy firm to buy out their specific debt portfolio. I became their bank and I immediately called in the loan. They are given exactly 30 minutes to pack their essential belongings into black trash bags and vacate the premises. Vanessa screams at Jamal, blaming him for being a fraud, while their wealthy neighbors stand on their manicured lawns watching the spectacle with quiet judgment. They are left standing on the curb surrounded by their expensive luggage with nowhere to go and absolutely no corporate credit cards to save them. The illusion is permanently shattered. Brenda's downfall requires a more delicate touch. She attempts to find refuge in the one place she believes she holds unshakable moral authority: her wealthy, prestigious church community. She intends to spin a tragic narrative of a devoted mother victimized by a cruel, calculating daughter-in-law. She prepares to play the martyr, hoping the congregation will rally around her and offer financial support. But her strategy completely implodes before she even steps foot in the sanctuary. Trey is incredibly efficient. He ensures that the crystal-clear audio recording from Zuri's diaper bag is anonymously distributed to every elder deacon and prominent member of the congregation's prayer group. They all hear Brenda's shrill voice, aggressively defending a plan to steal a child's trust fund and ship a little girl away to a cheap institution. When Brenda arrives at the Sunday service dressed in her finest hat and clutching her pearl-embroidered Bible, she is met with a wall of absolute suffocating silence. No one greets her at the doors. No one offers a comforting hug. As she walks down the center aisle, the congregation parts like the Red Sea, turning their backs on her in synchronized disgust. The pastor refuses to meet her eyes. She is entirely shunned, stripped of her false piety, and left to rot in her own toxic isolation. The scene shifts away from the wreckage. The chaotic, frantic noise of the past week is replaced by a profound golden silence. I stand on the sprawling balcony of my primary penthouse. The sun is setting over the city, casting long, vibrant streaks of burnt orange and deep purple across the skyline. The air is cool and perfectly still. Inside the suite, separated by thick, soundproof glass, Zuri is sitting on a plush, cream-colored rug. She is happily building a towering castle out of brightly painted wooden blocks. She is completely safe. She is radiant. She will never know the toxic poison of the people who tried to destroy her future. The sliding glass door opens softly behind me. Trey steps out onto the balcony. His massive frame relaxes slightly as he leans against the metal railing beside me. He holds 2 heavy crystal tumblers. He hands one to me, the rich amber liquid catching the fading, brilliant sunlight. It is a rare, perfectly aged bourbon poured strictly neat. We do not need to exchange words. The silence between us is built on absolute loyalty and a flawlessly executed strategy. The toxic leeches have been surgically excised from my life. They tried to break me down. They tried to use my gender, my race, and my child as weapons against my success. They assumed I was an easy target, a quiet wife they could manipulate, terrorize, and discard at their absolute convenience. They were fundamentally, catastrophically incorrect. I raise the crystal tumbler. The ice-cold edge of the glass meets my lips. I take a slow, deliberate sip of the bourbon. The smooth, smoky burn travels down my throat, a warm and deeply satisfying reminder of my absolute victory. I am a mother. I am a corporate mogul. I am a woman who protects her peace, her empire, and her child with a ruthless iron fist. The city lights begin to flicker on below, shining like scattered diamonds across my kingdom. A slow, triumphant smile spreads across my face. The ultimate lesson here is that true power never has to shout. It prepares in absolute silence. When surrounded by toxic people who seek to exploit you, your best defense is undeniable independence and impenetrable boundaries. Let the greedy overplay their hands and inevitably destroy themselves. Your worth is never defined by those who try to tear you down to mask their own glaring insecurities. Reclaim your narrative fiercely, protect your peace, and never apologize for cutting the poison out of your life. Have you ever had to walk away from toxic relatives to protect your own peace? Share your survival story in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more empowering content.